Welcome to this webinar about rules of origin. The UK's deal with the European Union, called the Trade and Cooperation Agreement, TCA, means that the goods you import or export may benefit from a reduced rate of customs duty, also known as preferential tariffs. To protect UK and EU producers and manufacturers, the TCA's preferential zero tariffs only apply to goods produced or manufactured in the UK or the EU. Rules of origin determine whether goods being imported and exported between the UK and the EU are eligible for preferential zero tariffs. If they are eligible, this means there will be no customs duty to pay when the goods are imported. To benefit from the preferential tariffs, you must be able to prove that the goods you import into the UK from the EU originate there, and the goods that you export from the UK to the EU originate in the UK. If you're a UK-based business bringing or receiving goods into Northern Ireland, you should also check the origin of your goods. Throughout 2021, you have been allowed to export goods to the EU using tariff preference and get supplier declarations afterwards to give you more time. But from the 1st of January 2022, you must have supplier declarations, where required, at the time you export your goods. We'll cover this in more detail later in the webinar. This webinar will take about half an hour. Please keep watching to the end to hear how rules of origin may affect you and your business. You can pause and rewind whenever you want and work through the information at your own pace. We'll also provide links to further help and support at the end of the webinar. So, what are the rules of origin? We use rules of origin to determine the country where the goods originally came from. The origin is the country in which the goods, or materials, parts or ingredients used to make them, have been produced or manufactured. It's not where they've been shipped or bought from. Once we know which country the goods originated from, we can see if they qualify for a preferential tariff under the TCA. When goods are moved into the UK from the EU, or into the EU from the UK, you must follow 3 steps to be able to claim zero tariffs. These are: Step 1, classify your goods by finding the correct commodity code. Step 2, check if your goods meet the rules of origin. Step 3, get proof that your goods meet the rules of origin. Remember, if you're a UK-based business bringing or receiving goods into Northern Ireland, you should also check the origin of your goods. Step 1, classifying your goods. You need to classify your goods by finding the correct commodity code. Commodity codes are used worldwide to classify goods that are imported and exported. You can use them to check if there's any duty or VAT to pay and find out about duty reliefs. They are also needed to fill in declarations and other paperwork. You can find guidance on classifying your goods on the gov.uk website, and we'll show you useful links at the end of the webinar. The second step is to check if your goods meet the rules of origin. As rules of origin are not the same across the whole trade agreement, there are different rules for different goods. These are called product-specific rules, and you should check the individual rules for your goods. Once you've classified your goods, you can find the product-specific rules for your goods in the Trade and Cooperation Agreement. There are also tools on the gov.uk website to help you find the correct rules for your goods. We'll share useful links at the end of the webinar. Product-specific rules. Your goods may need to meet several rules, one specific rule, or there may be a choice of rules. Let's look at a few of these now. Product-specific rules set out what the requirements are for each product to be considered originating based on their harmonised system code. You can find information on how to classify your goods using the harmonised system and product-specific rules on gov.uk. As mentioned previously, we'll share links at the end of the webinar. Goods that are exclusively obtained or produced in the UK are eligible for preferential treatment. This rule applies to mainly agricultural products such as vegetables grown in the UK. It can also apply to mineral products extracted from UK soil. For a finished product to be classed as originating under this rule, any part or input used in its production that doesn't originate in the UK must be classified differently to that of the finished product. This means that you'll need to have classified all of these inputs and know their origin. The classification of the non-originating inputs may need to change at different levels of detail. These include chapter level, CC, heading level, CTH, or subheading level, CTSH, depending on the rule. The chapter is the first 2 digits of the goods commodity code, the heading is the first 4 digits, and the subheading is the first 6 digits. If a rule requires a maximum level of non-originating material, also known as maxnom, a certain proportion of the value of the final product must be generated in the UK or the EU. This can include UK originating parts or value added in the production, such as labour and manufacturing costs. A specific operation or set of operations taking place in the UK would mean it could be classed as UK originating. Specified operations are particular to certain specialised industries or products. These rules are common in the chemical sector and in textiles and clothing, for instance. So for textile products, the rules may specify that the weaving and cutting of fabric to make garments must take place in the UK for the product to be classed as UK originating. Once a product has gained originating status, it's considered as 100% originating. This means that if that product is later incorporated in the production of a further product, its full value is considered originating, and you don't need to take into account any non-originating materials within it. Example: Bradley has a business building customs-made motorbikes. He imports some parts from China, but the majority of parts are from the UK. The imported parts are processed to build the engine, and the product-specific rule for the motorbike engine is met. Bradley uses the imported parts to build the engines he puts into the custom-built motorbikes. This means the individual parts are processed and the rules of origin are met. If the engine is then used in the production of a motorbike in the UK, 100% of the value of the engine can be counted towards the originating content of the overall bike. The third and final step to claim zero tariffs is providing proof that the goods comply with the rules of origin. This can be through either a statement on origin provided by the seller or exporter to confirm that the product originates in the UK or EU, or through evidence the importing business has obtained about how the goods meet the product-specific rule and are originating in the exporting country, also known as importer's knowledge. A statement on origin is a declaration by the exporter that the goods are originating under the terms of the Trade and Cooperation Agreement, the TCA. The statement contains standard wording that the exporter adds to the invoice or any commercial document that describes the originating product in sufficient detail to be able to easily identify the goods. An exporter making out a statement on origin must be established in the territory they are exporting from. For example, GB if exporting to the EU, and hold information to show that the product is originating, such as the originating status of materials used in its production. This may require separate declarations obtained from their suppliers, supplier declarations, which we'll cover later in the presentation. For example, a GB exporter making out a statement on origin may require these declarations from their UK-based suppliers. As an exporter established in the UK, sending goods to the EU, you'll need your GB Economic Operators Registration and Identification Number, known as EORI, as an identifier on your exporter statement on origin. Exporters established in the EU will usually include their registered exporter or REX number when sending goods to GB. The statement on origin can cover multiple products in a single consignment. You can also mix originating and non-originating goods on one invoice, as long as you make it clear which goods are originating and which aren't. Your invoices will usually show a column listing the origin of that item, a 2-digit country code, or it might be a yes or no indicating it has UK origin. If not, you can check if the country of origin is included in the description of the item. Importer's knowledge allows the importer to claim preferential zero tariffs based on what they know about the originating status of the imported products and how it met the product-specific rules. It's an alternative to claiming preferential zero tariffs based on the exporter's statement on origin. If the importer is declaring the preferential origin of the goods and they are entitled to zero duty, the exporter or producer doesn't need to take any action to officially state the originating status of the goods. However, they may be asked by the importer to provide them with information about the product, the production process, and the supply chain. If the goods are originating, but an exporter or producer doesn't want to share specific information with the importer, their goods can still get zero tariff treatment by the exporter using the statement on origin option. Importers will need to consider what action they've taken to ensure the rules of origin have been met, and if challenged, whether they could provide evidence as necessary. Supplier's declarations. This is a declaration a supplier provides to the producer or exporter to give the origin of the materials used in the manufacturing process or for finished products that you buy and re-export. The producer or exporter needs this information to make a statement on origin. From the 1st of January 2022, if you make out statements on origin for goods you export to the EU, you must have supplier declarations, where needed, at the time you export your goods. These are needed as supporting evidence to confirm the origin of the goods when the manufacturer alone is not enough to meet the product-specific rules of origin. During 2021, you've been able to make out statements on origin without having obtained supporting supplier declarations at the time, if you were confident the goods you were exporting were entitled to zero tariff treatment. This easement was to give you more time to arrange for declarations from your suppliers and was conditional on you obtaining declarations covering any statements on origin you issued between 2021 and the 31st of December 2021. If you're asked to verify the origin of your goods and you can't provide the supporting evidence, your EU customer will be liable to pay the full, non-preferential rate of customs duty. You may be charged a penalty, and you may be excluded from using preferential tariffs going forward. Goods valued below certain thresholds don't require any proof of origin. They do still need to be originating and meet rules of origin to access zero tariffs. Thresholds for goods entering the EU from the UK are: for a small package sent from a private individual to another private individual, €500, and for a product that is part of a traveller's personal luggage, €1,200. This means that all goods imported into the EU for business purposes, including business-to-consumer transactions, need proof of origin. However, if the total value of the goods is below €150, custom duty is not charged, so businesses don't need to provide proof of origin. Goods entering the UK from the EU. For any product sent between private individuals, from a business to a consumer, or business to business, the threshold is £1,000. No customs duty is charged on goods imported into the UK that have a total value below £135. You will no longer be able to delay making import customs declarations from the 1st of January 2022. Most customers will have to make declarations and pay relevant tariffs at the point of import. Distribution: losing and gaining preference. Goods lose their preferential origin status once they are exported from where they were made and enter free circulation in the country they're imported into. Free circulation means after any duties or charges have been paid. For example, AJ Limited imports soft furnishings from the EU. The soft furnishings are considered as EU originating and will be eligible for the zero tariff under the TCA when they enter the UK. Once they've arrived in the UK, the goods enter free circulation and therefore lose their status as EU originating. If AJ Limited wants to re-export them to the EU and benefit from the zero tariffs under the TCA, the items need to be sufficiently processed to become UK originating. The TCA has provisions on accumulation, which means that EU materials can be treated as UK content provided those materials undergo sufficient processing in the UK and vice versa. AJ Limited sufficiently processes the soft furnishings from the EU, so they become UK originating. AJ Limited is then able to sell them back to the EU and benefit from zero tariffs. More information on what counts as sufficient processing can be found in guidance on gov.uk. Where goods aren't going to be processed in the UK, you won't be able to benefit from the TCA's zero tariffs. However, where goods imported from the EU are left unprocessed, they may be able to be re-exported to the EU without paying import duty using returned goods relief. To qualify for this relief, the goods must be returned within 3 years from when they were exported. You must have proof of export, and the goods must not have been processed or altered beyond minimal maintenance and repair. Guidance on this relief is available on gov.uk. The EU and UK both have a returned goods relief policy as part of the Union Customs Code and UK domestic law. Traders should discuss the requirements with HMRC or the authorities in the relevant EU country. Where goods are being re-exported to the EU, traders should discuss with the Customs Authority in the relevant EU member state. Before we end the webinar, we thought it would be useful to show you how documentation passes along the supply chain. First, the exporter must provide a statement on origin declaring the goods are originating under the terms of the Trade and Cooperation Agreement. In some cases, this requires a supplier's declaration, a separate declaration sent by the supplier or producer to the exporter. This would be because the exporter needs more evidence, such as information on the originating status of materials used in its production. This, in turn, is checked by the exporter before sending the exporter statement on origin to the importer. The importer submits the exporter's statement on origin as proof to claim zero tariffs on their customs declaration. The importer can claim zero tariffs without the exporter's statement on origin by taking responsibility for origin based on their own knowledge about the originating status of the imported goods, or importer's knowledge. The exporter wouldn't need to provide a statement on origin in this case. We're almost at the end of our webinar. Here is a slide showing useful links, so please take a few moments to have a look. Thanks for watching.